Let's have a little lesson on this Amanda's Gavotte by Obregon, and this is a Spanish kind of intermediate Spanish piece, and you can get the free sheet music and the free tab off the website. You can follow the link for the PDF underneath the video. Not too much to say since you have pretty much everything you need with my fingerings and the notation and the tab and everything like that, but we'll go over a couple of little performance ideas on this piece. First off, overall, it's a pretty flamboyant little piece, very kind of whimsical and lots of rubato and like lots of repetition. I left out the repeats when I was playing it just then, but you can add the repeats to kind of elongate the piece overall. And you could probably be even more flamboyant with it than I was in my performance. And I'll point out some of those spots. So, once you get a handle on some of the chord shapes, which are pretty basic chord shapes with the exception of the intersection, which we'll go over, then the piece shouldn't be too difficult. There's not really a strong melody until you get to like some of the melodic passages where it kind of trails through, a nice little motivic melody kind of trails through the chords. But for the most part, it's kind of like a very guitaristic piece. So let's just, we'll just do a walkthrough of the piece and talk about it as we go, because I don't have a lot of things to say musically about this piece. Practice the chord shapes on their own, making sure you can navigate. You know, making sure you can like grab these chord shapes. But for the most part, it's first position playing and the chords are pretty basic. So it starts off with a triplet and then some pretty block chords, and I think you can get just a nice gavotte kind of march to it. Those ornaments, you just play the first note of the ornament with the bass note. So there's some serlandos and rallentandos in this piece, so you could make it more extreme. I go for a little bit more of a moderate thing just to kind of keep the tempo more secure, but you can experiment with that a little bit. So at bar 10, we have this little figure, and I'm not sure how well it works on modern guitar. I mean, it's pretty flamboyant, and these strings are very new, so they're a little bit scratchy right now. But sliding all the way up an octave is a lot of string noise. I think it works better live than it does on a recording because like you just get so much of this, right? And if you actually want the glissando, there's not much avoiding the string noise. One possible solution is to just slide up on the third string. You won't get the full one octave glissando, but it gets rid of that string squeak, so that could be an option. Like if I did it on the fourth string just for the sake of that's how it was written originally. But I think if I was performing it or recording it, I might consider, you know, just kind of faking it. You don't get the full chromatic scale, but you get the effect of it. Now, in terms of striking the top note, you can go either way. You can either slide up and then strike on the way down, or I decided to highlight the top note, you know, to try to just bring it out nice and clearly. So you can experiment. Either option I think is just fine. Going on to bar 14, I would slide the second finger down there instead of trying to jump the first finger over. It's too awkward to jump that first finger, so slide the second finger down. You just get those harmonics. You can just release the chord. This is an open string ringing. This is not the most intellectual piece, so I think you just jump up. Same thing. And then you're back into the same material at bar 18. So let's go into the major section. So it shifts from A minor into A major at bar 26. And this section is a little bit more difficult, so you might have to practice it a little bit more slowly and carefully. Bar 4 strings, so you can get that chord. I would return to this instead of keeping the bar, just because you have to rebar 5 strings here. You can see even in the video, like I didn't practice this piece that much. I readjusted my bar instead of barring all 5 strings right off the bat. So follow my markings very carefully on the score, because barring all 5 there is a much better idea. You don't want to readjust. That way the B is already ready to go. So bar all 5 strings. And then here, that's a pretty easy shift. You just slide the 4th finger up. But you just have to get used to this chord shape here. So, I mean, there's not much to say, you just have to practice it. Luckily, the 4th finger is already secure. Down a fret, diminished 7 chord. I know these chords just by name, like diminished 7, and so I'm so used to grabbing them. So if you're not used to it, you just have to you have to practice the chord shapes on their own, right? Easy shift up to there, and then just go back and do the same thing. Return, and then jump. Again, you just have to know where you're going. Like, if you know this shape. Alright. But you'll notice when I shift, I get the bar first. Sorry. And just the top note, and then I put my 2 fingers down after. Practice grabbing the whole shape. Just so your hand knows what shape to look for. But when you actually play the piece, you get just the bar first, and then a split second later, get the rest of the chord. Gives you that just extra little bit of time and security. So you just get the bar, and then your E, high E is right there. And then it's just repeat. All the way until bar, just a couple bars later, so. This A7 chord here. I would play it with the bar first, then just get out of the bar, just because you'll have to hear. So, bar chord, let's see. Just release it. I don't think it's a huge sacrifice, and again, this piece, not the most intense compositionally oriented piece, so you can just drop the bar there and don't worry about the sustain too much. And then just slide down. I don't restrike the note here because I just don't think that the F is all that important, because you kind of have the primary ornament, so I think it's fine to not restrike it. And then this slide into nothing, I do a little bit of a pull off at the end, just to hear that E a little bit more clearly. If you don't do that, I don't know if I can do it without doing it. See, you don't really hear the E if you don't pull it off a little bit. So just do a little pull off. When you do this one, prepare the bar as you're playing the triplet, and then release. And then the rest of the piece is pretty much the same until the end. It just goes back into the minor. And then on the second ending, at the very end of the piece, at bar 51, I think the original does something like, and then a bar chord. You might consider just like trying to connect the melody as much as possible by sliding the fourth finger up there instead of doing the bar A. Either way, you're going to lose a little bit of like sustain from the previous notes, whether you go into a bar A or you just slide your fingers up. At least this way though, that G sharp to A, that tension resolution, the 5 to 1, is a little bit more clear. At least in my ear. Oops. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's a better way of doing it, so I'd recommend that. So I hope you enjoy the piece. Just practice it slowly at first, and it'll come pretty easily, I think. Because I think it's straightforward, despite its like flamboyance.